Hello and welcome to PFF Fantasy Football Podcast, a little preseason takeaway edition. I'm Ian Hartitz. Joining me, as always, the one, the only, Dwain "The Rock" McFarland. Dwain, our second pod today. We got a third coming up later. Great day to be great, my friend.
It is a great day to be great. And since this won't come out until later and no one will know, like I can tell you right now, we have pick one tonight.
Oh, CMC.
We're going to go CMC.
Come on,
I'll do
down.
it. I'm not afraid to go CMC number one.
All right, everyone. We want to go through key takeaways from the first week of the preseason. Apologies for this pod coming out when it is. We've talked about Canton before, but Dwayne and I have had a chance to go through the snap shares, watch the relevant plays, basically do everything that we need to do to now come tell you guys what we believe are the key takeaways here. So not going to run through every single team like, we'll start doing the regular season just because we want to try to save you guys maybe a little bit of time here. Still got some nice weather, perfect chances to go touch some grass, but you know what? That's what headphones are made for anyway, Dwayne. So can still touch grass and get better at fantasy football at the same time. Talk about multitasking there. But on PFF.com, we have Dwayne's fantasy football utilization takeaways from preseason week one. And I will have my fantasy football 9 key preseason takeaways up by the time you're listening to this podcast. So with all that said, Dwayne, let's get after it. Starting with Jets franchise quarterback, hopeful franchise quarterback, Zach Wilson, suffered a bone bruise and meniscus tear. Fooled a lot of, our fantasy industry doctors. Like, it looked terrible, Dwayne. I thought he tore his ACL just from watching it the first time. Did not look good, and now he is going to be out for the rest of the preseason. Week one is still in play. This isn't a season-ending injury or anything, but, man, Dwayne, the way Zach Wilson plays football, I enjoy it because for better or for worse, I think it's entertaining. He's not going to check the ball down. He's going to try to rifle it 20 yards downfield between 3 guys. Like, what's the better real-life decision? Probably what Mike White does all the time, but I at least enjoy watching Zach Wilson more. For this gunslinger thing to work out, he needs to be able to escape the pocket. And if we now have Zach Wilson without the mobility, that's not only problematic for him, man. It's problematic for Garrett Wilson, for Elijah Moore, for Corey Davis, for the whole crew. With that said, is there an argument, Dwayne? As Matt Waldman low-key said on the pod we just recorded, the offense does tend to look a little bit better when Joe Flacco is out there. Do you see any scenario where this is actually a good thing for the Jets skill position players?
Well, I think at a minimum, like, it could just be a static situation, right? Where we're at least stable. I think the thing with Zach Wilson, and we agree, like, we've talked about him, like, it was bad. Like, the year one was bad. Like, he had some flashes of some good things. But at the end of the day, he was still a rookie. And so there was still this chance, right, that he could come out because people thought Josh Allen sucked, remember? And then all of a sudden he came out and, he made improvements. It can happen. People can get better. So that's the problem. You're not getting that with Flacco, right? Flacco actually may be better than the worst version of Zach Wilson, but we know Flacco doesn't have the ceiling of, well, possibly he could still be this great quarterback. We know who Flacco is. At least Wilson had that potential upside still, even though he played poorly, in his rookie season. So at the end of the day, I don't think it's going to move ADPs. It's not going to make a big difference. I think the nice thing with Flacco, though, is they don't have to rush Zach Wilson back, right? They don't have to rush it. If he's going to be some lesser version of himself that can't move around the way they want, maybe they wait a month, maybe they wait 6 weeks. They can do whatever they need to do to make sure that he's healthy to get back. And I think that's got to be the Jets' priority right now, with the pick that they spent on him.
Oh, Joe Flacco is going to play until he's like 45. Like, he's just on that trajectory where he's going to keep being like a backup who knows his role. He's just going to be the mentor there and keeps on going. I am looking right now. Shout out to Spotrack at Joe Flacco's career earnings. And my goodness, Dwayne, do you have a guess? Joe Flacco in 14 seasons has made how much?
Career earnings, 230 mil.
171 mil, but I'm sure once you throw on it,
hit the over there.
Once you throw in some endorsements and all
and
all that.
covered.
All right. Also, we got some very good potential every down handcuff running back news. Now, Dwayne and I did our handcuff tier episode about a month ago, working with the best information we had. And in each of these 3 situations, we had some questions for the guys. So the 3 running backs where, and again, this is what we're focused on, everyone. It's the potential usage from the preseason with the starters specifically. So, like, you're not going to hear us talking much about, my God, look at the way so-and-so was moving out there. Look how good Ty Chandler looked with the backups in Minnesota. We are most concerned with trying to figure out what the actual workload takeaways are, because that's better than whatever intern's been putting together, the team's unofficial depth chart. So with that in mind, All three of these running backs I'm about to name played 100% of the snaps alongside their team starters, with their team's actual starting running back resting. Nyheim Hines in place of Jonathan Taylor, Alexander Mattison in place of Dalvin Cook, and Khalil Herbert in place of David Montgomery. Now, Dwayne, Mattison and Herbert were similar kind of stories where last year we saw them handle the every down role. We know if they get the touches, they can give us some good fantasy production, but because of the new coaching staffs, we were a little bit concerned, or at least I was a little bit concerned, if they would still have that every down role should something happen to Dalvin Cook and or David Montgomery. It's looking good after one data point. And Nyheim Hines, this is a really surprising one for me because we've had the, if I was in a fantasy league, I would draft Nyheim Hines, quote from Frank Reich, all the way back in March, and then we're getting the Wentz to Matt Ryan stuff. So I think there is already plenty of people drafting Nyheim Hines as an RB4, thinking he can give us some PPR standalone value. But even going back before Jonathan Taylor, when it was just Nyheim Hines and Marlon Mack, when Mack got hurt, it didn't become the Nyheim Hines show. It was Jordan Wilkins stepping up and actually taking a lot of the early down work. Nyheim Hines' role not really changing, more so like a JD McKissick. Man, Dwayne, if all of a sudden we're looking at Hines more like an 11th round Tony Pollard type, I like that, my friend.
Yeah, I'm moving Hines up today. Like I'm reworking my ranks right now after writing this. And yeah, I mean, 100%, like you mentioned. And the other thing, Philip Lindsay, came in with the second team, offense, on the fifth drive, so I mean, he was pulled after halftime, so he's gonna probably be, in the mix, Tyson Williams, he's back again. So he rotated behind, but there's not a lot, behind, Nyheim Hines either. So, and I think the other factor here could be, you also have Frank Reich coming out and saying like, look, we know you can't just win in this league by just running the ball. Yeah, there's still a team that's built to run the ball, but now that they have Matt Ryan, they do seem a little bit more open to also airing the ball out. So I think that's another out for Nyheim Hines. I think the outs now are, one, we know what he can do in the passing game. You could have the Colts actually decide to throw the ball more. That gets him on the field more. Number two, they could just be in more trailing or close scripts. Last year, remember the Colts, they had a very, very, very fortunate season with the way that their game script worked out, and they were able to lead so often. And so just regression in that alone could equal more opportunities for Nyheim Hines. And now we have this new thing, this nugget that we didn't really, we weren't accounting for, which is maybe if Jonathan Taylor goes down, really Nyheim Hines will just see 65, 70%. We know he's not going to see 100%, right? These other guys are going to work in, but now it's in the range of outcomes, right? We could have him out there. I mean, if he's out there 60%, that's going to be huge, in this offense. So Nyheim Hines has to move up boards. In fact, I think you could make an argument now, Ian, he should definitely be going over Isaiah Spiller, should be going ahead of Rachaad White, should be going ahead of Tyrion Davis-Price. A lot of names were before. It's like, well, what's the point in Hines? We know that the JD McKissick floor is there, but what's the ceiling? I think there's now enough data points, and there's also enough outs for Hines that I think we just have to consider that maybe there's a ceiling that we just didn't think was there before.
Honestly, man, you taking Rashad Penny or Nyheim Hines?
Oh, I'm probably taking Nyheim Hines. I mean, I'm gonna say Penny, but I honestly I feel better about Hines in the offense he's in.
AP plays into it, but if we're just kind of saying, if we're doing the old Girl Scout question here, James Cook or Nyheim Hines?
I'm still taking James Cook, I mean, but still, you're getting to the spot where maybe that's the tier that. Honestly, that'll probably be the tier that I'm about to put Hines into. So he's, I don't know. I might have to keep him just slightly below that, but because that tier I've got Kareem Hunt, I've got Cordero Patterson. It's all the explosive pass catching down backs. Maybe I just need to set aside the fact that I haven't seen Hines really, in any sort of extended stretch, being able to handle carries. That's the only reason I, haven't put him there yet. But I haven't seen that from James Cook either, and that didn't stop me from putting him in that tier.
Very fair all the way around. Are you drastically changing anything with Madison or Herbert? I think this is going underlooked. I mean, maybe people just weren't as worried about it as we were, but to me, Dwayne, Madison is back on the map now as a handcuff that in the right roster build, I'm fine taking probably inside the top 40, 45 running backs.
Yeah, I'm good with Madison. I wasn't quite as out on him as you were, but we talk enough that it was definitely seeping into my brain, and I just find myself not taking Madison as much. He's still a player that you have to know it's purely a handcuff, right?
Yeah.
Maybe he gets a little bit more work with the new offense, but most likely it's only going to be a situation where you get to use him if the starter in front of him gets hurt. I think it's probably going to be the same for Khalil Herbert, but David Montgomery's a lesser back than Dalvin Cook, right? So I think Herbert, there's also still the potential that what if he overtakes Montgomery? What if he carves out more of a role than Montgomery? The other nice thing for Herbert was really playing, long down and distance. He played the 2-minute offense. We actually saw him do that last year, different coaching staff, but in the 3 games that you were without David Montgomery, he played all the long down distance. He played all the 2-minute offense. So despite the fact that Khalil Herbert didn't do those things in college, we've already seen him do it at an NFL level. And so, yeah, Herbert and Madison, I really like them. I think I might like Herbert a little bit more because I think he has a slightly better chance, Ian, to carve out a role from Montgomery versus Madison versus Cook. However, if you just ask me which one I would want to own if their starter went down, it's Madison.
Yeah. No, I think that's very well put. Interesting quote here from Ron Rivera, who was quoted as saying, Antonio Gibson was never my friend. Okay, that's a lie, but basically it's been the worst week imaginable for Antonio Gibson. Dwayne, we've been fading Gibson pretty much the whole off season. I didn't even think it'd get this bad though. I was still around to the idea, hey, if he keeps falling in around 7 or 8, it's different than the RB dead zone being around 5. I don't know if it is that different anymore, man. It's worst case scenario, Brian Robinson is looking more and more likely to just really eat into the early down work if he doesn't already own the short down and distance work. J.D. McKissic's role hasn't changed. We have Antonio Gibson legitimately being used on special teams now in training camp. Dwayne, I'm not sure if I've seen this just evaporate this quickly, man. This is brutal for Gibson to go out there, have the usage go against him, and then fumble again after all this going on last year. I'm not going to say that fumbles don't matter, but it's not something I actively make a point to work into my process unless it's something we really think can take away from a player's opportunity. But I think we're at that point, man.
Yeah. So, with Gibson, we'd already been fading him. But at the end of the day, he still has receiving chops. He still has explosive playmaking ability. So if he were to get into rounds 9 and 10, where we're taking similar profile backs, I think it's fine. But Brian Robinson has to move up the ranks at this point. At the end of the day, even before the fumble stuff, we were just out on Gibson because, okay, great. McKissic has passing downs. Brian Robinson's going to probably still the short down and distance work, which is the thing that kept Antonio Gibson afloat last year, folks. That was the thing that kept him going. He was the guy that was still in there to score the touchdowns. And those 2 things are gone. I think people were probably overreacting to the fumble thing. I think, what you have is an old-fashioned coach here. It's just basically, and training camp's the time to do it. It's just to make your point with the player. I think it's still going to be a 3-way rotation. Again, you don't want to be touching Antonio Gibson in round 5 or 6 of drafts. I just checked ADP, over on ESPN and some of these other sites. He's still going in that range. So I don't know how many drafts that is because I can't tell I can over some other sites where I can see, oh, this is based on the last 50 data points. Have no clue how those are even figured over on those sites. So I don't know how actionable it is, but he hasn't moved enough. He's not falling. And so apparently, I guess he hasn't been moved down the ranks, maybe even on those sites. Maybe he has. But yeah, it's a guy you want to avoid in the middle rounds. If he gets, round 9 or 10, it's fine. I don't mind taking a swing on him because then he fits the profile that I like. And if something happens later in the year, all of a sudden you really could, have a player. I think the biggest, and you let me know what you think, Ian, the best path to Antonio Gibson all of a sudden being this valuable fantasy commodity would be if J.D. McKissic went down. If J.D. McKissic went down for the season and you still have Brian Robinson getting half the work, Gibson gets half the work, but he picks up the passing down work, then all of a sudden I think you're looking at someone we're probably ranking, as a high-end RB2, mid-range RB2, maybe somewhere in there every week, but he could give you that spike week upside. Again, Robinson's probably still going to keep the carries inside the 5, and they have other mouths to feed. Let's be honest. This offense has improved. Curtis Samuel didn't play last year. You draft Jahan Dotson in the middle of the first round. Terry McLaurin obviously already there. There's a lot of other mouths to feed, so I don't know how prioritized Gibson will be, but he is a guy that works downfield. He does the things we like. But to your point, just don't touch him until it's round 9 or 10. At that point, I wouldn't mind having some exposure.
Yeah, if McKissic disappears, that's great and that's dandy. It's just not. It's tough for us to exactly predict.
I know so, it is. But he is talented. Things can happen. I still believe Antonio Gibson's talented. I believe right now he's in the doghouse. And so in the first 2 years, people also have to remember he's been hurt when he's been playing. He's been dealing with knee injuries and different things. He had the meniscus thing, he had the shin thing with the stress fracture. We've never even seen him healthy yet. So I don't want to get overboard on being out of him. I'll just never draft him. But he definitely has to fall well past ADP.
I think the rounds 9 through 10 point was that's about the spot we should be looking at him at this point. Okay, we do have some running backs that are already hurt though. San Francisco 49ers lead back Elijah Mitchell with a hamstring injury, expected to miss the remainder of the preseason, is getting the expectation he will be ready to start the year. It doesn't seem assured though. I don't know. I'm guessing that he'll be questionable on the week 1 injury report, and it's gonna be our first official pain in the ass of the fantasy season to figure out. In his absence, so Jeff Wilson was also not playing. I think I saw somewhere it could have been a personal reason. I'm not sure if it was straight up rest or not. Trey Sermon ended up taking all 11 snaps alongside Trey Lance. Tyrion Davis-Price was coming in as a distant backup. So just week 1 of the preseason, stuff has plenty to change. We're going to talk more about Tyrion Davis-Price here in a second, but Dwayne, with Elijah Mitchell, I mean, someone that we haven't exactly been overly high on. A lot of that has to do with TDP and just also moving from Jimmy G to Trey Lance. And we've talked about the impact that mobile quarterbacks have on the entire offense many times. Mitchell, with this injury, is he someone that maybe you're down to buy the dip, or just kind of another reason to not get too excited about him this season?
Again, just depends on how far he falls. With Mitchell, it's
too nuanced, Dwayne. We just need to be TikTok stars here. Come on.
I know, but it does just depend on how far he falls. I'm not going to take him around 6, but if he's there in round 7 or 8, I don't have a problem with Elijah Mitchell. The challenge for Mitchell is going to be, we know how fickle Kyle Shanahan is anyway, and now he's going to get to watch all these other guys over and over while Mitchell can do nothing about it. And he could easily just fall in love with Trey Sermon again, right? It could be Tyrion Davis-Price. It could be Jeff. It could be any of these guys. And so if there's one team where you really don't want to be the dude sitting out, and while your coach is sitting there getting all excited about the other guys, you're that meme that you do of the guy, I don't know if he's got the bowling ball or whatever the hell that guy's doing, but that's Kyle Shanahan, right? Sitting over there whenever Trey Sermon is all of a sudden lighting things up. So yeah, it's a player we've already been avoiding. And it is a specific situation where typically I don't care about a hamstring injury right now. If it's a week out from the season, that's a lot more problematic. To me, you can rest Elijah Mitchell, you're going to be fine now, but Kyle Shanahan, he just adds a wrinkle to that, man.
Always does. 2 more running back issues, actually 3 overall. Well, we all know Chris Carson retired with the neck injury. Also have Rashad Penny dealing with a groin, although I think I did see he was back at practice. Kenneth Walker with a hernia is getting the classic, Pete Carroll optimism, but we're not sure where he's going to be out. So I'm going to put, his timeline to come back anywhere from 1 to 52 weeks from right now. So we'll see what happens there. Dwayne, the problem is exactly what we've been afraid of and that we thought was going to happen did happen, where in the preseason game, DJ Dallas and Travis Homer were working as the pass down backs. I mean, look, again, the right build, the right round. Okay, we can then get behind one of these Seahawks guys, but man, I just think it's growing increasingly difficult to even find a best case scenario. It's an early down back that's probably going to be in a committee if they aren't even 100% on early downs. And we know it's going to be a pass down back. And the offense is likely going to be terrible. We were showing our lovely quad force. I got to look at those freaking running backs in the app. I'm guessing, the entire circumference is freaking nothing compared to a lot of the other guys out there. So with the Seattle backs, Dwayne, can the price even be right at this point? I want to do a full fade article and just literally have it be Rashad Penny and Kenneth Walker at this point in time. I don't know, man. It's just getting tough.
Yeah, it is tough. And again, it's all about the Travis Homer, DJ Dallas stuff. It's just sickening, right? I mean, in this preseason game, it's like you said, it's what we thought was going to happen. So Rashad Penny didn't play. Kenneth Walker got the start. He got half the carries. Okay, on an offense that's going to suck. It's not going to win many games. It's going to trail all the time. Yes, they have a stubborn coach, but we just don't want early down backs, right, on offenses that are going to struggle, because then we saw Travis Homer come in and get all of the 2-minute offense. He got all of the long down and distance situations with the starters. So this is their plan. And if both backs are healthy, Rashad Penny and Kenneth Walker, guess what? They're going to share too. And anyone that tells you that they know which one of these guys is going to get the workload, they don't know. They do not know. It's going to be a split. One of them, yes, is going to be. I would expect Rashad Penny to be ahead of Kenneth Walker, but to put a stake in the ground on this offense and be like, well, it's going to be Rashad Penny. He's so good. Kenneth Walker, get out of here. Come on, folks. It's just not. I'm with you. I don't see the reason. I don't know that, you know me. There's not many players I just do full fades on. To me, it's always just about hate the ADP, not the player, like you talk about. But if there was an offense where I just didn't really want to touch the running back rotation, and we just set talent aside just because we're there's just too much to overcome. This has got to be one of the ones at the top of the list.
And oh yeah, they're also running behind Nathan Yonkey's 30th ranked offensive line. So great article from Nathan on PFF.com, looking at a lot of the cool stuff that Eric Eager and some of our interns have been able to pull this summer. With just the different offensive line performances, with having perfectly blocked plays both in the pass and run game. Not looking good, Dwayne. At least they have that touchdown upside. Oh no, they don't really have that going for them either. But yeah, other than that, go draft those Seattle running backs. Let's talk about these rookie running backs, Dwayne. And again, first week of the preseason. There is plenty of time for these guys to rise up. With that said, New York Jets running back Breece Hall splitting snaps with Michael Carter to start. I'm just going to run through these at first, Dwayne, and you can come back and kind of hit on some of the key ones. So Breece Hall is splitting snaps with Michael Carter, looking like a true 50-50 situation. Yeah, we do expect Breece Hall to still lead the way, but this really might be a bit more of a Javonte Melvin Gordon, year one situation than people are hoping for, particularly for Breece. With the Seahawks, as we mentioned, Kenneth Walker got the lead without Rashad Penny in that game. But the big story was that Travis Homer was getting the first looks in pass-first situations. With James Cook, he was rotating with Zach Moss as Devin Singletary rested. We can live with 2 back committees. 3 is when things get tough. Now, Zach Moss, he could be out of the picture by the time week 1 comes along, potentially. Just continue to monitor this because it could be tough for James Cook's early season standalone value. Tampa Bay Buccaneers running back Rachaad White, number 4 running back seemingly at the moment. Fournette rested. Giovanni Bernard got to start. Did hurt his ankle, so keep an eye on that, but it doesn't seem to be too serious. And even Keyshawn Vaughn coming in first. Some good stuff from Matt Waldman about Rachaad White's potential long learning curve to become a rusher. Again, standalone value looking awfully iffy, but Rachaad White still certainly has a high ceiling as a handcuff. With Tyrion Davis-Price, mentioned he worked after Trey Sermon with Elijah Mitchell and Jeff Wilson out of the picture. He's also looking like a number 4 running back at the moment. Brian Robinson seems ready to push Antonio Gibson for some early down work. Again, though, this is a 3-back committee. I think Brian Robinson, it's okay to move him up a little bit. He would be if Gibson leaves the picture, Robinson's ranking is going to boom up a lot higher than McKissick's. So I've always understood taking Robinson over McKissick later in drafts, but the more and more this backfield becomes split, the more the answer to which running back to target just starts to become no. Houston Texans running back Dameon Pierce was impressive out there, and he got some nice words from his head coach, Lovie Smith. So this is an example of, not to overly freak out, but he was still the number 4 running back. I mean, Rex Burkhead didn't need to play because he's fucking 45 years old at this point. Marlon Mack had early down work. Dario Ngubawale had pass down work. Still not exactly the toughest depth chart you would think for Pierce to move up into. Hopefully we see some first team snaps as early as this weekend. Las Vegas Raiders running back Zamir White looks like Josh Jacobs' primary backup at this point. We had the confusing Hall of Fame game usage, but Jacobs was back to getting starters rest, as was Amir Abdullah. So right now, if we had to equate this to New England, I would say Josh Jacobs, looking like Damian Harris, Zamir White, more so Ramondre Stevenson, Amir Abdullah, the James White, or what's probably going to be this year, Ty Montgomery, sorry Stevenson truthers. With the Chargers, Isaiah Spiller behind Joshua Kelly in the competition right now, similar to Rachaad White. To me, yeah, I'll probably bump Spiller down a few spots just to kind of stay with the ADP and take a look at it. But to me, Spiller and White still have sky high handcuff upside. But right now, this situation, it just brings our early season standalone value into even more question. With the Patriots, Pierre Strong working even behind J.J. Taylor. They rested Damon Harris, Ramondre Stevenson, and Ty Montgomery. With the Titans, Hassan Haskins rotated with Julius Chestnut. I mean, this is just going to be tough. If Derrick Henry goes down, it's Haskins, Chestnut, and then Dontrell Hurd getting the pass down work. The answer to which running back to handcuff behind Derrick Henry might just be no. And finally, Atlanta Falcons running back Tyler Algier, 4th running back to enter the game. I mean, we'll see, Dwayne. Tyler Algier is a cool guy. He did I wasn't in it, but he did the sleeper fantasy draft. So he has a team. He took himself in round 11, which that's awesome. If you're an NFL player in fantasy, how are you not gonna draft yourself? But
he didn't reach. He actually kind of close to ADP. Look at this guy. He actually probably plays fantasy football.
Bro, I hope just keep at least keep him on the team. That'd be pretty bad if he didn't even make the team after all this.
I think he makes the team.
I think he makes the team too, but just remember he's
You're
a
right.
5th round rookie, currently 4th on the depth chart. So still plenty of time to move up, but that's what it is. Which one of these, Dwayne, stick out to you as the most actionable? Again, which one of these are you actively moving guys down rankings and changing your opinions? And which ones of these are you saying it's freaking 60 minutes of preseason football? Ian, chill the hell out.
Yeah, for the most part, it's 60 minutes of preseason football. Remember, it's the first preseason game. Running backs, there is an adjustment that a lot of times you may not see them out there with the starters early on because they don't want that. You don't want your freaking starting quarterback blown up in week 1 of the preseason. So, and there's also just this kind of mentality, right? Of like, hey, earn your playing time. So I think it's fine. It's week 1. If we see this in week 2, we see it in week 3, I become more concerned. But I think it is enough, right, for folks just to remember, like, there's a wide range of outcomes on all these players. So we'd rather see the positive, right, than the negative. So like one that I don't care about at all is the Tennessee thing. Last year we saw them like in that first game, like use Mekhi Sargent all the time in that first preseason game. So the Julius Chestnut thing, I don't know. It's probably another Mekhi Sargent thing, right? My guess is, but we'll see. Hassan Haskins, not like he was a 2nd-round pick or anything. We'll see what happens with that. So that one I'm not that worried about. If I look at one where I'm actually gonna, move someone down, I think overall is probably just I'm going to be more willing, like, to look at some of the receivers and things, and again, it depends on your roster build, but you can't help it. You don't feel as confident now clicking on Rachaad White. You don't feel as confident now clicking on Isaiah Spiller. You don't feel, and Isaiah Spiller is one because I'm like, man, like Josh Kelly and Larry Roundtree haven't shown anything. Like, honestly, I thought Isaiah Spiller would very quickly take over this job. So I'm that one definitely has my eyes open because I don't think he has a lot of competition. Rachaad White, Gio Bernard's been a good passing down back for a long time, right? Now Keyshawn Vaughn also played ahead of him in that game, and Keyshawn Vaughn has done absolutely nothing to this point. So, that does worry me a little bit. What I hope, Ian, is that, especially like over at FFPC drafts and stuff like that we've been doing, we see these guys going round 9. Like, I'm not doing that. I'm not taking Rachaad White in round 9. I'll just go a freaking different damn direction than having to do that. Like, I'll still pull the trigger on him, like, probably round 10, round 11, depending on the build that we have. Tyrion Davis-Price, like, that one's tough. Honestly, at this point, it's just like, let's just draft Trey Sermon
right
in round 17. I like TDP. We know the draft capital's there, but just is, Trey Sermon was a 3rd-round pick last year. So, like for me, anytime I'm talking about the 49ers, I think I'm just going to go with the lower guy. I am moving Brian Robinson up because, like, at this point, we just have to – the door is open to where he could just take Antonio Gibson's job, right? Yeah. So I think you have to move Brian Robinson up. Dameon Pierce, I don't care. I watched that. Like, I mean, he looked really good. Like, yeah. So some of these – and I'm sure you watched all these guys. Like, of all the guys that I watched on this list, I thought Pierce looked the best. Like, when I watched him, I was like, whoa, okay. Like, eyes are open. And then I look at his depth chart and I'm like, Marlon Mack. Yeah, Marlon Mack was a nice back, but like he's still bad all these injuries. Rex Burkhead, Agunbowale. You like that, Ian? Agunbowale. I know you have him down, and you could match me on that one. But I think Dameon Pierce is the one that, like, honestly, like, after what I saw, I feel more conviction about taking him, where he's going at ADP. I think you do have to move Zamir White up. So Kenyon Drake falls down the board. I know we didn't, you touched on him, but Kenyon Drake really seems to be the odd man out. I'm not drafting him anymore. If I'm going to take a Raider in the last round of even a 20 rounder, it's going to be Amir Abdullah at this point. But Zamir White, I think, deserves to be, he should probably be going in that, around 11, 12 range where all these other names that we've been consistently picking, he should be there. I don't think you can draft Pierre Strong anymore. Like, we can always get a chance to draft Pierre Strong later, right? But like, there's just too many other names in front of him at this point.
I do have right now on my little rankings note sheet, just to remind myself to who I'm going to move up and down once I get to my next update. Dameon Pierce, out of all these rookie running backs, is the only guy that I'm like, okay, let's move him up here a little bit. So, not saying
you're not going to tap Robinson up a little bit, or Zamir White.
I am sorry. Brian Robinson is also going up. Zamir White, I have middling because it's still one of those things where it's just committee, and like, if something did happen to Josh Jacobs, is Zamir White taking over, or is Kenyon Drake just next man up? So it'll still be a 3-way committee, to your point. But at the end of the day, like, I think where he's going right now, like, he should be going higher. Like, I definitely want to steer folks, like, don't wait till round 15. Like, take him around 14 or 13. Like, if you need a back. But yes, with Dameon Pierce, Lovie Smith saying all the right things. And it is just week 1 of the preseason. Let's see what happens in week 2. And then guess what? We're pretty freaking close to getting actual regular season data that'll make our lives much, much easier. Moving on to some of the rookie wide receivers, bit more of a mixed bag. Had some positives. I mean, Drake London had the minor knee injury, which is obviously not a positive, but was going out there with the first team, certainly expecting him to be featured from day one. Also saw Chris Olave and Jahan Dotson be guys that, again, we were just expecting to be out there from day one in their respective offenses, pretty much regardless of the formation. We did see Garrett Wilson and Treylon Burks, No, everyone's got something bad to say about Treylon Burks these days, but both of them could not crack the full-time initial 3 wide receiver sets. We did see Wan'Dale Robinson, Alec Pierce, Jalen Tolbert, Sky Moore, especially depending on that Mecole Hardman injury. More on that in a second. Those are guys that could be in the 3 wide receiver sets. Romeo Doubs making the most out of his opportunities, with Christian Watson still coming back from the knee injury, although he did just get activated from the PUP. And then we got Tyquan Thornton, Velus Jones, David Bell, and Danny Gray basically just continuing to work in with backups in their respective offenses. So real quick on Sky Moore, because this is interesting and we can kind of take it into our Chiefs conversation a little bit. Juju Smith-Schuster running a route on, or being out there for all 11 snaps alongside Patrick Mahomes, MVS being out there for 9 of them. So Juju and MVS, as we expected, being the top 2 wide receivers in this passing game. The Mecole Sky Moore thing is where it's interesting. So this is the tricky part about just our industry, Dwayne, because someone gets hurt in practice, and by the time they even make it back to the building, you know, someone's already writing a freaking article like talking about what this means for their fantasy ranks and adjustments and all that. So Mecole Hardman did get carted, but it's a groin injury. And I mean, Ian Rappaport said like he walked off the field and then jumped on a cart to take him back into the building. Like, to me, that's a little bit different than like some guy carted off the field because he physically can't move. So would have been nice to get that, you know, kind of at the beginning of the
Can we hit some of these? Can I hit some of these as we go? Like once you're, just because it makes it easier. Like for me with Moore, like the big thing is it was already close to you. You hit it perfect. Like MVS.
And now this is huge.
Yeah, they were both out there, but at the end of the day, like Sky Moore was already rotating with Mecole Hardman, you know, in that game. And so if it's close like that, like I'm just leaning to the rookie. Like I'm gonna go with the rookie. And again, we've liked Sky Moore. We've been a proponent like for Sky Moore. We've talked about, you know, thinking that he might be the best chip at cost right now in the Kansas City offense. So obviously maybe there's some bias coming in there from me, but at the end of the day, like that's just the way I look at things. If it's really close between a rookie and a veteran, I think it makes it easy. I'm just gonna go, you know, with the rookie.
All good stuff. What else with these wide receivers? Are you really buying? I mean, look, Dwayne, Wan'Dale Robinson, I see that we need to move him up the ranks, but it's not like I'm drafting him like, oh, let's go, baby, Wan'Dale Robinson now. Like, can't wait to start him in my wide receiver 3 slot. Like, what is kind of our upside case for Wan'Dale? Like, if Kadarius Toney just gets hurt or something, because Sterling Shepard, while he's not back yet, I mean, I don't think we have reason to believe he's going to be out for the entire. What is our Sterling Shepard update? Because that would be the problem if Shepard comes back and all of a sudden now, like the Wan'Dale Robinson hype train is going to probably just be crashing back to the bench.
Yeah, I think Robinson for now, like, is just a guy that, you know, we were getting in round 20 that you should consider in round 14 or 15. You know, okay. I mean, look, he's going to be out there. He's going to be a starter. I think the upside is a Kadarius Toney just can't stay on the field, right? So that could potentially make him, you know, and if Sterling Shepard is slow to return, that could make him a top 2 weapon, you know, in the offense. And, you know, I mean, he could definitely, it's easy for these guys to pay off the ADP. The way I look at this, Ian, is, you know, we're drafting all these guys, you know, rounds 12 through 16. Like, I want access. I want access to Wan'Dale Robinson. I want access to Jalen Tolbert. I want access, you know, to all these rookies that we can still get late. But like some of the other guys, like Jahan Dotson was the one that like stuck out to me the most. And we've been talking about him just purely based on the fact that like where he was taken in round 1,
never made
going
sense.
Like, yeah, he was going, you know, 4 and 5 rounds after the rest of the guys that went in round 1. And so ADP is slowly starting to adjust, but I thought that this was a really good, you know, confirmation point that we should really be drafting Jahan Dotson more. He should not continue to slide in drafts. You got to make sure he should be off the board, in my opinion, by round 11 in most drafts. Maybe round 12 is the latest. But I mean, he was out there 100% of the passing plays with Wentz. He played inside. He played inside 7 of the snaps. He played outside 15 of the snaps. Not a rookie, but Curtis Samuel was also out there, which was just good to see him. He's healthy. Yeah. But it does look like Jahan is locked into the number 2. Curtis Samuel played primarily from the slot, 12 snaps, you know, and he was in a route on 71% of Wentz's dropback. So he's a guy that you can take at the end of a draft still. But Jahan Dotson, like, really stuck out to me as being the one that, like, people just have to stop. Like, he shouldn't be going after Jalen Tolbert, right? He's a guy that went higher in the NFL draft. You know, probably is just a more talented player, and is in an offense where he can be, you know, the number 2 behind Terry McLaurin. So I thought that Jahan Dotson was like the big one. Nothing really to say about Olave or London. London, it does sound like he's going to be fine. You know, it just might take a little time. Garrett Wilson was another one where we did see Corey Davis start on the outside, and we had, obviously Elijah Moore was out there as, the primary guy. He played 100% of the offense with the starters, but Garrett Wilson, when you look at him specifically, he only played 11% of the snaps while Zach Wilson was still in there. And so it was kind of a weird game log to look at, because once Wilson got hurt, they actually kind of pulled a bunch of guys off. They were like, oh crap. And so I don't know, I think Garrett Wilson was maybe about to get more run, but Braxton Berrios played 67% of the snaps with Wilson. Only 11%, to Garrett Wilson playing out there with Zach Wilson. So again, first game, talent profile for Garrett Wilson. We want to be buying into it, but man, we don't need him to be splitting play. We don't need him splitting with Braxton Berrios. That won't be good. If that's the case, we need him to beat out Corey Davis, on the outside, because we don't expect a lot from the Jets offense. So while I love the talent profile for Wilson, still going to continue to draft him right now. Again, week 1, where he's been going. But if we see this again, in week 2, week 3, I'm going to get a little bit more concerned about Garrett Wilson. Oh, and Treylon Burks, man, hit what your thoughts are on him, because we're going to have to move him down, is my thought. Treylon, it's the most negative. And again, it's the drumbeat, man. It's not just one thing. We've just been hearing it. Bad thing, bad thing, bad. Now, some of it has been made up, but even when we parse through that and we find the truth, there's enough bad stuff going on around Treylon Burks that, man, I'm just starting to think he's got to move down boards.
Yeah, I'm certainly not going to prioritize him at this point. Are you going to move him past? Are you going to move him right next to Garrett Wilson, kind of?
Probably. He's still got a better path, I think, less competition. So I would keep him in front, of Garrett Wilson. But I was pretty bullish on him. So part of it is me. I've been bullish on Burks, but he didn't enter the game until the third drive in a game where Robert Woods and other guys weren't playing, and they made him play into the fourth quarter. And the other problem with this is, even he could have showed them, right? He could say, fine, you guys want to keep me out there like this? Watch me ball. He got one target. He only registered one target. Didn't have.
Dude, it's the Titans. It's the Titans. They drafted AJ Brown. His first game as professional, he goes for 100 yards. And the next week, Adam Humphries and Tajay Sharp were out there over AJ Brown. That's the thing with some okay. To me, a lot of this stuff with Garrett and with Treylon Burks, it really impacts my early season thoughts on them, because we're going to be out there setting week 1 lineup soon and stuff. So as much as we are in draft mode, I'm also trying to look ahead to what to be expecting from week 1. And yeah, I do think it's going to take a minute for Treylon to break through at that. With that said, we see this, man, as much as we mock the Justin Jefferson thing, every time we see it, he wasn't a full-time player until week 3 in that offense. He was losing a lot of snaps to BC Johnson early on, and it's ridiculous. It was ridiculous. It didn't happen that long, but it did happen. Same thing with AJ Brown. He was playing under 70% of snaps until freaking November. So yeah, Burks is going to go down.
It's a tier. Honestly, it's a tier thing, right? So it's I'm just going to be readjusting the order of the players in the tier, right? Yeah. They still, folks know how I make tiers by now. If you've been listening, it's based on criteria that Burks is still going to meet. He's just going to be lower. I had him at the top of this tier for a long time. So now I'm at the point where, okay, I probably got to move him down 2 or 3 spots in the tier. Jahan Dotson needs to come up 2 or 3 spots, in the tier. So it's really more about that. It's a guy that Burks, earlier in the offseason, he was a guy I was willing to get really aggressive with, in late round 7, right? Round 8. I'm just not going to do that anymore. Still going to be fine. If you want to let Treylon Burks fall into round 9, I'll take him. You want to get him in round 10? I'll take him. I can't continue to, probably, be as aggressive with the way that I've been targeting.
Any other rookie wide receiver thoughts? You ready to move on?
Well, I figured you got to hit Romeo Doubs. You are the number 1 fan for the last 3 months standing. So
this is true. All you Devi people out there, hey, you guys can fight for second place in the Romeo Doubs fan club. That's fine. He looks good out there, man. I do wonder again, though, I just think, even if he impresses and beats his valuation, I think the pathway for him to be a meaningful guy that you're feeling good about starting, it's a long way away. Lazard, Watkins, and Cobb were resting. It could just easily be a situation where Dobbs is their wide receiver 5, wide receiver 6. This would hardly be the first time, Dwayne, that we found a young wide receiver that Rodgers seems to like and that seems to flash with their opportunities. And then the regular season comes along and, they're not on the field.
What's the cutoff for you, Ian, of where basically, for me, it's round 12. Once you get through round 12 and you want to prioritize guys like Doubs, for your build, and you want to take him in round 13, even though someone else tells you to go in round 15. I really don't care, honestly. Like I can look at him and say, well, we don't like the depth chart. Like Randall Cobb hasn't been anything for years. People know where I stand on Allen Lazard. We've got Sammy Watkins, who maybe he could surprise us, but he hasn't ever really lived up to his billing either. And then you have Christian Watson, the guy they spent the second round pick, hasn't been able to be on the field yet. So like I get it. Like it's Aaron Rodgers. You got the guy that's actually performing. You want to take him in round 13. You want to take him around, even late round 12 or whatever. That's fine. But that's kind of my threshold. Like if he starts moving up into round 10 and stuff, that's where I start to have a problem. Like once you get past the top 150 and you want to do what you want to do with your roster and you got you guys you want to put a chip down on, I think it's fine. Just don't get carried away.
That's kind of how I feel. Like I was looking at about that rank spot. So, 12 times 12, 144. I have Jamal Williams as my 145th player. And he's like the last guy I see for a while that I'm like ever going out of my way to kind of get on the squad. I think everyone else, they might have their pass to relevance, but I like that call. So round 12, round 13 or so. Go ahead and take your shot on Romeo.
In 12 teamers. Yeah. Like if you're an 8 teamer, let it slide a little bit.
Bump it back. Absolutely. Got to quickly pay some bills, everyone. If you haven't heard by now, Underdog Fantasy is the best and easiest place to play fantasy football this summer. We've all been there in fantasy football leagues. Sunday morning, you're digging through news reports, trying to figure out whether to start your stud wide receiver that tweaked his hamstring last week, or you have a player on your team who hasn't been getting in the end zone, and then one week he suddenly goes off for 30 points on your bench. With Underdog Fantasy, all the stress of who to start each week is lifted off your shoulders because it's best ball format. Draft your teams before the season starts and get the best score in your lineup each week. Right now, you can draft an Underdog's Best Ball Mania 3 tournament to take a shot at $10 million in total prizes. Plus, Underdog is going to double your first deposit up to $100 when you sign up with the promo code PFF. And if you play 10 of those dollars using promo code PFF, you get a free PFF subscription. Underdog drafts close before NFL kickoff. So what are you waiting for? Head on over to UnderdogFantasy.com or the App Store. Play $10 with code PFF and draft your Best Ball Mania team today. Also want to shout out to DraftKings. The next generation of fantasy sports is here. Download a DraftKings Daily Fantasy app now. Sign up with promo code PFF. Click the Rainmakers tile and opt in to get your first card free. Plus, play for millions in prizes all football season while building the ultimate NFT fantasy franchise with Rainmakers Football. That's promo code PFF. Build, play, win. Only at DraftKings. Contest entries dependent on type and number of NFTs held. Eligibility restrictions apply. Void where prohibited. See DraftKings.com for details. And of course, shout out to our friends over at Manscaped. Gentlemen, all men strive for gold in their life, right? Gold medals, gold watches, gold everything. However, there's a certain type of man who goes the extra mile. He walks with the confidence of an eagle and giggles in the face of danger. He's a big, hairless, winning machine. And when he unzips his pants, he sees platinum. That's right. Manscaped would like to introduce to you their best and biggest ultimate hygiene bundle yet, the Platinum Package 4.0. Also, shout out Platinum Mike Perry fighting in bare knuckle championships this Saturday. I will be tuning in. Manscaped is the leader in below the waist grooming. Now trust them with the whole shebang. Join the 4 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped by going to manscaped.com for 20% off and free shipping with the code PFF. Manscaped's brand new Platinum Package 4.0 is the biggest bundle they've ever offered, giving you a bulk discount on Manscaped's top products. So get 20% off and free shipping with the code PFF at manscaped.com. That's 20% off with free shipping at manscaped.com and use code PFF. It's time you enjoyed the finer things in life and get yourself a platinum package for your platinum package. Isaiah McKenzie, Dwayne, the Bills starting slot receiver, sure looks that way. He got the starter's treatment. Jamison Crowder was out there with the second team. Not a given. We did see down the stretch of 2021 from week 17 through the divisional round, neither Beasley nor McKenzie played even 51% of the snaps because they were rotating. With that said, last 3 seasons, Cole Beasley, one of only 10 players with at least 100 targets in each of those 3 years. I was on a Fantasy Pros podcast earlier today, and we're using the Fantasy Pros ADP. Makes sense, but he's going as the wide receiver 82 with the Fantasy Pros redraft consensus ADP. He's already up to wide receiver 65 over at Underdog. So, Dwayne, I'm buying at both those prices, man, and will continue to do so. How high, though, do you think McKenzie could get by week 1 if we get this role really cemented? Because, man, it's an explosive player and the offense that we love. I'm not out on Diggs or Gabriel Davis, but this is one of the actual offenses where if we have 3 full-time wide receivers, we can actually expect 3 fantasy relevant wide receivers.
Right. Yeah. you just got to move him up. You should be drafting him, around 13, around 14, somewhere in there. I think, round 12 is fine too. Like, it's just the high passing volume that you're getting, with the Bills. And to your point, like it could change, as it goes. But right now with the data we have, and again, this is another one that's been kind of consistent, right? We already had the quote, from the coaching staff basically saying, well, basically Isaiah is just adjusting to life as an every down starter. Okay. Well, then now we see him rested like a starter. To me, it seems like it really is going to be Isaiah McKenzie. I would kind of be surprised if it's not him to this point. Crowder could, he could do something, still as well. Like he's a good player. Like, so there's still paths for Crowder to challenge. And now Crowder probably won't go in most home leagues. And if you're playing in like a draft that's got 20 rounds, like I still think taking a shot on a guy like Crowder in round 17, 18 is fine. Doesn't work out early in the season. You want to make a cut, of the player. Okay, great. But if something does work in your favor with Crowder, like you've got a player on a really good offense, right? So I think you can make a quick call on what to do with Crowder if you draft him. I would note real quick, like Khalil Shakir, like what was nice, like he did start outside. He played 13, of his snaps wide, and early in the game when Crowder was still in there, like he was mostly playing wide. Then as he left, he rotated into the slot. So he's playing all over the place. They put him in line, they put him in the backfield. So Shakir's another name to keep an eye on. Right now, he's the odd guy out, but I could see him pushing past Crowder, as well. And, then that potentially unlocks if Gabe Davis doesn't play as well. If there's an injury, Khalil Shakir could suddenly find himself as being a player that we're very interested in the Bills offense.
Quickly, Kenneth Walker had a procedure done, Dwayne. The team is not calling it a sports hernia, though. So take that for what it's worth. And the Packers signed blast from the past, Travis Fulgham out there. Remember that era, man? That like 3-week stretch where Travis Fulgham. Bro, there's a legit
like
picture.
A Jake Kumaro thing.
This happened in a real game. Travis Fulgham got thrown a jump ball in the end zone. Ill-advised throw from Carson Wentz. You guys have seen a few of them before. Fulgham goes up against Marlon Humphrey, and freaking Marcus Peters comes down with the football with two freaking all-pro cornerbacks at his feet. What a time to be alive. Talking now, Kansas City running back and wide receiver rooms. We mentioned the wide receivers already. I don't think we need to really go back into that. But yes, Sky Moore, if that Mecole Hardman injury ends up being significant, could immediately be in 3 wide receiver sets. Certainly seems to have be on the right path to get there regardless of Mecole's eventual health. With the wide receivers, Dwayne, I will be relenting a little bit and moving Juju up, although I still think that the disparity between him and MVS plus Sky Moore is a bit too high. But yes, Juju, 11 snaps, 9 snaps for MVS, 4 for Mecole. Justin Watson was out there for 1, but did not get the route. Juju Smith-Schuster, man. Are you taking him ahead of DeAndre Hopkins, Dwayne?
Yeah, I've already been doing it. And I think you have to. He's probably going to be the starter there week 1.
Are you taking him ahead of Brandon Cooks?
Yes.
Jalen Waddle?
No.
Gabriel Davis?
No.
Allen Robinson?
It's right there, though. Right there. No.
Okay, so like high-end wide receiver 3. That's where we're settling.
Yeah, but that's what you just named is the tier. That's where he's sliding in for me.
Okay, I'm cool with that. Isaiah Pacheco, he's for real. How about that, everyone? Actually got here. 3 snaps with the first team offense, 2 routes, 1 carry. Clyde Edwards-Helaire still did lead the way, though. 7 snaps, 3 routes, and 2 carries. Did have Jarek McKinnon out there, 1 snap, 1 route. So Pacheco, obviously, like the Ronald Jones fantasy stock. Throw it in the freaking garbage at this point. But don't get too carried away. And we talk about this with Matt Waldman, Dwayne, so I don't want to repeat too many of the same points. But, man, you mentioned the data from the always great Fantasy Mojo. Fantastic meeting the man up there in Canton, Ohio. Let's not get too carried away on Isaiah Pacheco. Dwayne, if anything, we should be looking a little bit harder, I think, at the CEH usage and say that, hey, he's someone where in these later rounds, when we're seeing CEH versus Jacobs, Gibson, Miles Sanders, I think Clyde is starting to have a case as if you're going to take a running back in the dead zone, it might as well be Clyde Edwards-Helaire.
Yeah, I think so as well. Again, like it's tough to have much confidence in CEH, but we've talked about it a couple times before. Like he has been playing with injuries pretty much his whole career. Then we found out about the gallbladder issue that he had before the season last year. So yeah, I think he is a player that I look at it and I'm like, man, like you start looking at the running backs in the dead zone and you start trying to think like which one, with the question we asked, might I regret that I look back and be like, wow, that was staring me right in the face every draft and I passed it every damn time. And the name that I come up with is Clyde Edwards-Helaire. You know, I think that is the name where I've got to make sure that I at least get a little bit of exposure. As much as this whole thing with Pacheco is fun, you know, I mean, he's a 7th rounder. This probably means that Clyde Edwards-Helaire, you know, is pretty much locked into being the lead back. Now, I do believe Pacheco's a guy that you can take, you know, in round 12. Matt disagreed. He thought that's, you know, probably more like round 13. My thought process is like in round 11 and 12, a lot of the guys that we're taking at this point, like Isaiah Spiller, Rashad White, all those guys, even though they have the higher draft capital, at this point, we've got enough noise around Pacheco. I think he should be in that range, right? So if you decide that Pacheco's the guy that you want, great. But right now, the rocket ship that Pacheco's on, like, I don't know, man. Like, he might be going inside the top 10 rounds. He's already a round 10 pick right now over at the FFPC. You know, someone posted the other day that in a main event, like he went in round 5 or 6. Like, so I don't know where the ceiling is for Pacheco as far as what his ADP is going to be. But that obviously would be way too high for me.
I had someone tweet at me like a Photoshop news story where it was Isaiah Pacheco's head over someone and was like, man jumps, Isaiah Pacheco runs in the burning building and saves like 5 babies. If you're out there, I'm talking to you listening to this podcast right now. If you are at all good at Photoshop and want to send me any sort of hilarious Isaiah Pacheco meme stuff, I will retweet it at iHeartits. Let's make Isaiah Pacheco. Let's just keep the hype going, Dwayne. I want Isaiah Pacheco to be going ahead of Clyde Edwards-Helaire by the time week 1 comes around. You know, let's just embrace it, even though it doesn't make too much sense. All right, let's talk some tight ends. We have a quick moment of silence here. All right, Dwayne, you're moving Albert O down. You said it yourself. Let the people know why.
Yeah, I mean, look, the talent profile and everything's still there, so that doesn't change. But he can't be the centerpiece. I actually did an update today on my tight end draft strategy article, and if you had read it before in the late round, like he was it, like he's the centerpiece. He's the guy that you've got to get. When I say late rounds, like I'm talking rounds 12 and 13, you know, of your drafts. And so I moved him out of that this morning. I'm moving him, you know, down the ranks. If you get him in a deeper draft and you get him later, I think it's still fine. There's a pathway there for Albert Okwuegbunam to still, you know, see 60, 70%, you know, of the routes. And he could surprise us in week 1 and do that. However, all the data points that we've got as they add up, like you have to react, right? First, it was Dulcich, you know, in round 3, and that wasn't enough just because I'm like, okay, well, fine. Dulcich is going to play, but Okwuegbunam's still going to run far more routes than what he did last year with Noah Fant, right? So I could justify that, you know, because the talent profile was there. Well, then we start hearing the fact that, well, Okwuegbunam, you know, he's struggling a little bit, right? We're hearing some negativity from the beat writers. Then the next thing we get is the first preseason game. He comes out there. He played the entire first half, number 1, while the rest of the starters all got to sit. He was only in a route on 30% of the dropbacks. So they were making him stay in and block. They weren't leaving him on the field. And then something that you talked about earlier in the offseason actually also came into fruition, which is, you know, you have Green Bay coaching staff coming over with Nathaniel Hackett. You had the Mercedes Lewis, you know, got to be out there in 21 personnel, heavy personnel type stuff, because he's the blocker. He's the guy that if we decide to run the ball, like he's going to blow up the linebacker. Well, that's Eric Tomlinson in this offense. And you mentioned that as being a possibility. And he was out there. He handled all the 21 personnel snaps. And so it's just, man, it's too much now. It's just too much. Now we've got all of the, you know, we talk about the steady drumbeat a lot of the times around the positivity. Well, it can go the other way. Maybe we call it, you know, the clashing, you know, of a tambourine or something. I don't know what would be more negative. But it's all been bad for Alberto, right? Basically, since uncovering his data profile and saying, like, look at this player, Noah Fant's traded, that was like the peak for Alberto. Every other piece of information since that moment has been bad. And so I can't just sit here with blinders on. I have to move him down.
And don't confuse us with this, like, all right, now let's draft Greg Dulcich. Like, we're probably just not going to want anything to do with this tight end room. And that's, you know, what we got to be careful with in the preseason. Jawan Johnson playing ahead of Adam Troutman. That doesn't mean we should draft Jawan Johnson. It means, like, definitely don't draft Adam Troutman and continue to not draft.
Just don't draft a Saint tight end.
Exactly. Except Taysom Hill in the right format. But that's a story for another day. 2 more negative impacted tight ends. Definitely Seattle Seahawks tight end Noah Fant rotated with Colby Parkinson. Wow. Yes. High price starter. Apparently Will Dissly got the rest. Once again, not expecting good passing efficiency. And if Fant's going to have to split anytime, which is sure is looking that way, it's just going to be tough for him to meet value. Really just feel free to bury him in those tight end 2 ranks at this point. Mike Gesicki it's an interesting one, Dwayne. Everyone in the industry seems to be pissed off that he's not getting the slot and wide snaps. I would love if Mike Gesicki can be running routes against linebackers and safeties instead of cornerbacks. I don't have a problem with that. We just want him to be out there on the field. I don't care if his hands in the dirt. I don't care if he's standing up out wide. Only ran a route on 63% of the snaps. And just like Alberto, the Dolphins are basically resting all their starters, but they still have Mike Gesicki out there anyway. So I'm not out on Mike Gesicki. Honestly, I've been getting more shares of him than I have all offseason recently because he's just going in like the final round or two of a lot of these drafts at this point. What did you kind of make of Gesicki's route rate? And is this it's not the best kind of data point, but let's just see what happens when they actually have Tua and those guys out there. That's kind of my takeaway right now.
Yeah, the route participation's worrisome, but like for me, if he can stay on the field and heavy personnel, so 21, like when you've got a fullback out there plus a tight end, I think it actually opens the door for a more significant role for Gesicki. So like this one to me, I'm just kind of hanging around. I'm neutral on it. I think he's still a mid-range tight end too. His talent profile hasn't been great, but it also hasn't been bad. Like it's above average. So he's a player that actually, like, while a lot of people are thinking this is negative, like I'm kind of looking at it. I'm like, well, I mean, our main concern was Miami was going to use all of these heavy formations and he just wouldn't be on the field. Yeah. Well, at least he's out there. Right. And so I think there's going to be potentially an opportunity where this turns into a positive thing. And who knows, maybe, and again, it's preseason. Coaches they're looking for very specific things. They could just want to see him block. They're like, hey, we just want to see if you can do it. And then all of a sudden, if they decide that he can, to me, this could open up more for Gesicki. So it's not something right now where I'm overreacting to. I'm actually fine with it. I think it could end up being a positive, but we'll have to monitor it. Oh, and real quick on Fant, Colby Parkinson basically, I think, played the Will Disley role, and they rested Will Disley, and Colby Parkinson was playing his role. But at the end of the day, it's still bad, because now Noah Fant was only around 55%. Like I'm like, you got to be kidding me! Like 55%, like when you don't even have DK Metcalf or Tyler Lockett out there, like, and you're trying to evaluate your quarterback, and Geno Smith with the starters. Like, what does that tell us about Fant? Do they just think he sucks? Like, I don't know.
You see some of those Drew Lock throws though. Kid put some good tape out there, Dwayne, but the mainstream
He's always
media,
putting out good tape.
Mainstream media refuses to address it. All right, we did have 3 positive tight ends, though. David Njoku, 100% snap rate with the starters. Harrison Bryant still out there, will be involved, but that's what we basically need for Njoku. The problem is that haven't gotten the Watson update yet, but I don't know about you, Dwayne. I am expecting Watson to miss at least half the season. Wouldn't be surprised if it is in the 12 to 16, 17 game variety as well. So, hey, Njoku, every down roll, great. Jacoby Brissett experience is not going to be so great. Also at Jacksonville Jaguars, tight end Evan Ingram. Guys, snaps and routes correlate, but routes are 100% more important than snaps. So when we see 64% snap rate for Ingram, the 77 route rate is far better. Dwayne, you quiz me on this like every freaking week when we're doing the Sunday review. 80% routes. That's the magic number we need to hit. Ingram's pretty close. And we also did see New York Giants tight end Daniel Bellinger play 100% of the snaps with the starters. Ricky Seals-Jones wasn't out there. I'll be honest, I just usually dismiss most day 3 players, particularly day 3 rookie tight ends. So looking at his prospect profile now, Dwayne, shout out playerprofiler.com. Always love just getting there quick, hitting snapshot of players. I mean, we're looking at a player that can run here a little bit. His best comparable is Foster Moreau, someone we have seen have decent stretches out here. 75th percentile Spark X athlete. Daniel Bellinger, no, like don't draft him still unless you're in a super deep league and all that. But he's
tight end premium 20 rounder. I think
there we go.
I think he's a fine last round pick. Kentley Platt on Twitter. You guys can check him out. But he does the raw scores, the raw athletic stuff. 9.63, third highest for a tight end. So I mean, he's got an athletic profile. He's getting on the field. I think there's worse things, right? Again, needs to be like a 20 round draft, tight end premium. I took Bellinger over the Draft Sharks Invitational 2 weeks ago. It is a tight end premium super flex. Didn't get a lot of tight ends that I liked early on, so I had to throw darts at the end of the draft, and Daniel Bellinger was one of those.
Overall thoughts on the Njoku Ingram? You moving him up much?
No, no, they're right. The tier I have them in, like this, just basically confirms where I have them. But it is a positive for Njoku. Your point's the best one. Like it really all hinges on Watson. But at the end of the day, we wanted to see that he wasn't going to split this time with Harrison Bryant. and he didn't. Bryant did get on the field with the starters, but only when they went to 12 personnel. So I think that's positive for Njoku. And then just one general thought on the tight ends and receivers. I will take it a step further. Snaps do not matter at all. Just don't even look at them for tight ends and receivers. All you care about are the routes per drop back. Like, you want these players that are out there 80, 90. Receivers, you want 90%. Like, that's really good, but 85% is doable. Tight ends, 80%, is the magic mark. Like, snaps are so misleading for receivers and for tight ends. Just like, you can honestly throw them out. You do not need to know anything about them. You want to know about the routes. That's what you care about.
For this season, Dwayne, if I reference snaps for wide receivers or tight ends, just cut me off, tell me to shut up, make fun of me, because I need to get better.
If you don't know the routes, they're still fine, because to your point, they typically correlate. They get really tricky, though, for tight ends. Tight ends is where it's more tricky. For receivers, it correlates more strongly, the snaps to the routes. So, I mean, and not everybody has route data, right? And some people don't want to pay for a sub, and I get it. Like, people are on budgets and stuff. So if you don't, and you're using, you can use snaps, but if you've got access to the other kind of data, or you can just listen to our podcast, like, the routes are better.
Amon-Ra St. Brown, yes, he did memorize all 16 receivers drafted ahead of him as motivation. And he can also list off their colleges as well, which, man, 16 wide receivers ahead of ARSB, the sun god himself. Hate to see it. That is in the news, Dwayne, but you actually uncovered something a little bit more important that we did see during the second half stretch of last season. Like, that's kind of the part that people miss in the Amon-Ra St. Brown breakout. Yes, the Swift and Hawkinson injuries made it more convenient for Goff to force feed him. But Dwayne, there really was more of a usage change for Amon-Ra St. Brown relative to his role as a strict wide receiver.
Right. And that was before all these other guys got hurt. So Amon-Ra, we did our edition of, we did our pod a couple of weeks ago about the number one question we want to answer in preseason for every team when we talk. And maybe we need to go back and actually redo that and just go through it and see if we have an answer,
nice.
For each one of these. But Amon-Ra St. Brown, the thing we said is he just going to play in the slot? Because if there was a way to torpedo Amon-Ra St. Brown's value, it would be only playing in the slot. And then we know Detroit's going to be multiple in their formations, right? They're going to use, two tight ends. They're going to do some stuff where they want to come out, it's the kneecap biters, right? They're going to come out there and establish it on certain games. So we needed to know that Amon-Ra St. Brown was also going to play outside, which would give him a path to staying on the field enough. With the first string offense, he played 100% of the snaps, including 3 snaps outside. He did kick inside when they were in 11, which was the primary personnel group that they used during the game. Josh Reynolds exited the game, whenever they went to the more condensed sets where they wanted to get heavy, and Amon-Ra stayed on the field, so that is huge. DJ Chark also played 100% of the snaps on the other side. My guess is even once we get Jameson Williams back, I think that's going to hurt DJ Chark, not Amon-Ra St. Brown. And again, this is a steady drumbeat thing, right? We saw what happened at the end of last year. He hit the 80.0 PFF receiving grade, the thing that, when we read the list, it's the who's who. We don't need to rehash that again right now. But then we've got, coming in, to the season. Yes, they did draft Jameson Williams, but then you hear their coaching staff say, look, he's our offense. Like, they've come out and said that. We've got Jared Goff, who used to play with Cooper Kupp, supported top 5 season for Kupp. We've got Jared Goff, who has supported multiple top 24 and top 36 finishers as receivers, or just passing, options. So I think there's so many things going for Amon-Ra St. Brown right now. Like, man, he's just one of my favorite picks in round 5 of drafts. And sometimes you can still get him in round 6. Cool. I'm not shying away from Amon-Ra St. Brown. And this is a big data point, in my opinion, that tells us we just keep on drafting him.
If I'm not taking, the quarterback or running back in round 5 or 6, then you go to wide receiver, and then you go to Amon-Ra St. Brown. As we said, Dwayne, any problem in your life, just draft Amon-Ra St. Brown. It's going to make things better, at least to some respect. Kyle Pitts, I got our PFF projections pulled up right now. Here are the guys like next to Kyle Pitts in terms of like projected yards. Pitts is at 1,077 yards. We got Brandon Cooks at 1,081, Terry McLaurin 1,099, Keenan Allen 1,031, Michael Pittman 1,076. This has been our allure for Kyle Pitts, Dwayne. It's when the right wide receivers and running backs go before him in round 3. Now we're looking at a freaking monster tight end who has a chance to put up these same numbers. And the wide receiver 2 range is so freaking deep that we can probably just get a slightly lesser version of whatever wide receiver we were looking to target in round 3 when they inevitably fall to round 4. And we did see some interesting uses, Dwayne, that hopefully will make life even easier for Kyle Pitts. Get those projected touchdown numbers up as well.
Yeah, so with Pitts, it's similar to what we just talked about with Amon-Ra St. Brown. In the episode where we said the one thing we would want to know from every team, the thing for Atlanta was, will they please? And I wrote a nice sweet letter to Arthur Smith, dear Arthur Smith, on Twitter, a few weeks back, just saying, hey, like, can we play Kyle Pitts as a tight end? Can we play him inside where he gets to match up against linebackers and safeties that just cannot match up with what Kyle Pitts can do? Guess what? First series, he lined up in line or from the slot 9 of 10 snaps. He was only out wide one time. And remember, folks, last year, why this matters, only 51% of his targets were against safeties or tight ends. That was the lowest of all tight ends in the National Football League that ran at least 200 routes.
Whew.
So while he has peers that are getting these really great these matchups against, the athletes that, more fit like their size, well, now all of a sudden you have a player that not only, just matches you in size, but can just run by you. And so for me with Pitts, it's just like, this is absolute wheels up. I think now his, and we talked about this on that episode. If Kyle Pitts moves inside, I think he finishes as the tight end 1 overall this season. So I just think, wow, I'm totally in love with Pitts in round 3. I'm almost to the point where I'm willing to just take him over any receiver going in that range because of what you just mentioned. I think he has the same upside as far as yards and touchdowns, and we get to play him at tight end, folks. We get to play him at tight end. It's just a huge advantage. That's a strategic advantage that you want to take. You want to put it in your pocket, and just run with it away from the draft. So I love Kyle Pitts in round 3. I love Kyle Pitts. We might get to the point where I just love Kyle Pitts at the end of round 2. I don't know, but I mean, to me, it's really tough to pass on Pitts.
Just love Kyle Pitts in general, and
just love him. Let's just make that the title of this
podcast.
Dwayne loves Kyle Pitts.
Not that there is anything wrong with that, Dwayne.
Not that there's anything wrong with that.
I got a couple boomer. Oh my God, the word. What's the word I'm looking? Boomer references that I can still pull out of my pocket from time to time, Dwayne. There we go. Last one here. We would be done by now, but Dwayne called my ass out. We were slacking. We were setting up the show. I said, I want to try to get this around an hour. I know we could talk for 3 hours about every team. We always can, but let's try to keep it important. And Dwayne's response to me was, imagine a world where a true Ohio State Buckeyes homer would rather talk about tight ends that don't matter over an explosive playmaking wide receiver who's playing inside and outside and has only not exploded so far because of injuries. No, we're not talking about Curtis Samuel. We're talking about Paris Campbell up there in Indy playing ahead of Alec Pierce in 2 wide receiver sets. We got Matty Ice at quarterback. If they're going to throw the ball more, Dwayne, which seems possible with Matt Ryan there and some of the, just the constant drumbeat we've heard from Indy throughout the offseason could mean that we get a bit more of a pass-first offense. We know Michael Pittman's the one. We could be looking at the number 2 pass game option in Indy and Paris Campbell.
Yeah, I mean, that's it. He was out there even whenever they went to 12 personnel. So like what we talked about with Amon-Ra St. Brown, that's what we want to see with Paris Campbell because the Colts going to be in a run-heavy team, right? So you don't want a player that's only going to be out there in 11 personnel whenever they're using all these multiple tight end formations. That would be a problem. That could mean you end up with like a 60%, routes per dropback or route participation rate at the end of the season. And it's going to be tough to hit any sort of value, especially, if the team is running the ball often. However, if he's going to be out there all the time and we get slightly more, passing, and we talked about all the outs we talked about before, all of them, or most of them anyway, with Nyheim Hines that tie to the Colts, all the same things are really true, right, for Paris Campbell. And look, Campbell's a guy that has flashed for us in the past. He is a very athletic player. He just hasn't been able to stay healthy. Does this guarantee him that he's going to come through? No, but like he's free. He is free in fantasy football drafts right now. So even if you're drafting in a deeper league like FFBC, some of these other sites, Campbell's a guy you can get after round 15, and I like him as a shot in round 16, as a shot in round 17. And again, if it doesn't work out, he gets hurt again, fine, we move on. But what are we looking for in those late rounds? We want upside, talented profiles. And I think that Paris Campbell, the only reason we don't believe he has it is because of the injuries that he's had to deal with. And so, yeah, I think this is a big development for him. He's just got to stay healthy.
And with that, we're on to preseason week 2. Dwayne, what type of goodness you got at PFF.com for the lovely, loyal listeners this week?
Yeah, so number one, you can go check out all the utilization notes for week 1 of the preseason. I break it down for every team. I've got at least 2 to 3 key takeaways. A couple teams where there's only one. We just didn't see enough starters, so I'm not going to waste your time and make you read words just to read words. But, try to make it snappy, Ian. It's all bullets. Every damn thing in here is just a bullet point. I'm pretending all of you are CEOs and you don't have time to read, a million, word letter, from Dwain. Like, you don't care. You just want the bullet points. And so that's the way the article's set up. So, hey, normally it's a 10,000 word article. I got it down to 5,000. I'm going to try to get it even less, as we move forward. But for right now, like I feel good, like getting it down to where it's at for right now. But then also I'm updating all of my draft strategy articles. So when we talk about what's the plan for quarterback, that got updated today. It'll be out tomorrow. Tight end will be out as well tomorrow. And then I will hit running back and wide receiver. Obviously working over the ranks. Folks, you got to come check out the new tool that we have over at PFF. You got to come see it. And so updating all the ranks so that they'll reflect correctly in there, as well as help with the draft tool that you can have in there where guys can actually choose me. You can choose Ian, and it's basically telling you as you're going, like, hey, you're in round 7, like here are the ideal targets for your team. So got to make sure we've got everything in tip top shape so that as people are drafting, oh, by the way, folks, it's free. You can come try it. You get it for free for a week, and you get everything with PFF Plus for free for a week. Like, it's just a no-brainer. You got to do it.
Gotten a few DMs and ads asking where our rankings are. This is where the PFF Plus Fantasy Draft Guide. That's where we're updating the analysis, updating the ranks, trying to give you the best overall, to the freaking minute analysis that you can just have in the palm of your hands and go from there. Because as much as, I hope that you take away a lot of great stuff from what Dwain and I write and what we talk about. I know at the end of the day that, you are going to want to just see some rankings and just, remind your freaking self, because it's tough to memorize this. And just the data that we're able to supply, I think just helps back everything up. We have our blurbs, and to Dwain's point, we do even have a draft strategy mode that lets you see our targets, projected guys available, and just overall rationale for when we're trying to take what positions. So, hey, got some kinks in there. We're still trying to figure a few things out, improve it, get better and better. This is the worst it will ever be, and I already think it's pretty damn good. So can't wait to continue to grow it. I tweeted out today. Dwayne's going to tweet something out tomorrow where we have the link directly to it. So again, try it free for a week, the PFF Plus Fantasy Draft Guide. Just trying to make you smarter and go win some freaking money playing fantasy football. What's better than that, Dwain? I can't think of pretty much anything. So for Dwain, I'm Ian. Thanks so much for tuning in to the PFF Fantasy Football Podcast. And until next time, take care, everybody.